a public figure, serial entrepreneur, and active investor. Addis Alemayehou has been shortlisted on the list of world's 100 global tech changemakers list for his great contribution to the technology sector. And the chair of Khazanah Group, Addis is also a household name among African businesses and entrepreneurs, and he is my guest today in this edition of Addis Dialogue. With the program, I'm Shifarao Lako. Do stay with us. Addis, thank you so much for making the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Shif, for having me.
Well, as I said in my intro, you are a public figure, entrepreneur, active investor in Ethiopia. Of course, I know a little bit about yourself, but just as an icebreaker to our discussion, and for the people that aren't that familiar with you, can you start with a little introduction about yourself, who you are, and can you tell us something about yourself?
Thank you for having me again. So Addis Alemayehou, I was born here in Addis. I left here when I was 8 years old or 9 years old. I grew up in Nairobi, Kenya, which is my second home. And then at about 17 years old, 16 years old, I moved to the US and Canada. I've been back here in Ethiopia about 21 years now. So I was one of the first people to sort of move back home before it was cool to move back to Ethiopia. And in my 21 years, I've worked for development agencies, for USAID, supporting Ethiopian SMEs export to the US under AGOA. I've launched the first English FM station called Afro FM back in the day. I've also been involved and worked with my partners to launch Kana TV, as you know, 5 years ago. We've also been launched 251 Communications, which is an advertising agency, about 10 years ago. It's still around and still doing some work. And as of 3 years ago, we started looking at investing in local tech startups, and we're currently invested in about 16 startups here in Ethiopia as well as South Africa and Kenya.
You're the founder and the CEO of over 250 Communications with a humble beginning of 3 people marketing agency some 10 years ago, right? Yeah. So you have now remarkably enlarged and grown as we speak. And so as one of the leading PR and communications firms in Ethiopia, I'm really curious. Can you tell me more about that?
So we started the communications company about 10 years ago with my partners, Nazrawit. And we started with the 3 of us. With a passion for the work and the industry. We were lucky enough that at that time we had some of the global brewery companies, Heineken and Diageo, competing for the market here in Ethiopia. So it gave us an opportunity to obviously get some new business. And we've grown that company over the last 10 years to what it is today. And not only in Ethiopia, but we've expanded it to our affiliate in Kenya, as well as a communications company in South Africa called Africa Communications Group that manages PR and communications for clients around the continent.
So what is the message here maybe for, up and coming young entrepreneurs of Ethiopians who have this vision of becoming somebody, but who are, finding themselves in a naughty situations of maybe humble beginnings that you had to go through some 10 years ago? What's your message to them?
Just start. Yeah, you can sit and plan and dream about the perfect business or idea, but nothing is going to get done unless you start. And you have to start somewhere. If you don't have the money, find the money. If you don't have the expertise, find the expertise. If you don't have the partnership, find the partnerships. But you have to start somewhere.
Let's also talk about Khazanah Group. You are the chair of the Khazanah Group. You have become a household. Addis has become a household among African businesses and entrepreneurs. And I think that takes the lion's share for your recognition by the rest of world's 100 global tech changemakers list. So I want to ask you this question. What was your impression or your first feeling when you heard that you have been recognized? Were you expecting it?
No, not at all. No. I mean, for me, I'm humbled. It doesn't change what we do and what I do on a daily basis, but it's humbling to have a third party, somebody you don't know, somebody you've never met, to have a look at what you've done over the course of the last 10, 15 years and recognize you for your efforts. So it's very humbling. It also gives me energy and sort of the drive to do this even bigger and more.
So following that, congratulations, appreciations were, coming in. And of course, you tweeted that you have been, as you said, humbled by this appreciation and recognition. Was it overwhelming?
In all honesty, no. I mean, we were raised to expect more. My father, my mother, my family raised us to always try, to always push, and to always try to be the best. So for me, I don't, on a personal note, I tell my team and I tell everybody, I don't believe we've done probably maybe 5% of what we should be doing. I believe this is the right time for Ethiopia, it's the right time for Africa. For the first time, technology gives us the opportunity to leapfrog what others have done, and for the first time we can be at par, and if not, beat the rest of the world in terms of what we're able to provide. So this is an opportunity, and it's a major opportunity for Ethiopia and for Africans to grab it and move forward.
Yeah. So you're telling me that there is no complacency here?
It actually adds fuel to the fire, as they say. It actually wants to make you work more and wants to make you appreciate what you've done, but also want to, get a lot more done in the future. So we've actually regrouped and basically planning on the next 5 years and doubling and quadrupling what our plans were for the next 5 years. So it's given us the fuel that we needed.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The rest of the world, I think, identifies people outside, the Silicon Valley or the West, whose efforts directly impact people one way or the other. So I think your recognition is a big deal, right? Representing Ethiopia. It has also this message, I think, that technology is not always limited to, the West. Yeah. Yeah. So what's your take on that?
No, I think it's a viable sort of publication in the sense that probably some 80% of the people in this world on Earth live outside the West, right? So China, India, Africa, and the rest of the continents have the majority of the population, and that's where the next wave of growth, the next wave of innovation is going to happen. So in that regard, for this publication to look outside the normal. To look outside Silicon Valley and the West and see who else is out there making an impact in these growing economies. I think it's about time. It gives us the recognition that a lot of folks have been getting in the West, and nobody's been paying attention to what's going on in this part of the world.
Yeah. It's also, I think, gives the impression that you can do whatever you want to do. Be it technology or anything else for that matter. Yeah. Let's also talk about the visions of Khazanah Group. I think one of the visions of Khazanah Group is its conviction or strong belief in empowering African entrepreneurs. So in this regard, how successful have you been so far?
I believe we're just getting started, like I said. I think Africa in general, especially Ethiopia and specifically, is just getting started in this field and in this sector. I believe the growth is tremendous going forward for the next couple of years. And it's just now that we're getting recognized for some of the innovations that are happening. Samrawit, who was also picked on the same publication as me, has made a major impact in bringing a service and a product that wasn't available. She's created over 40,000 jobs that weren't there before she came along. I think there's another 100 or so Samrawits that could also take place over the next couple of years. And I think for the first time ever, the government of Ethiopia is recognizing technology and tech and digital innovation as a platform to grow the country and move the country forward. So it's for the first time we have a government that says, hey, we know what you're doing, we want to help you, what do you need?
So you're receiving all the necessary support from the government?
100%.
You have gone continental in your vision, right? Yeah. So what are some of the challenges and the opportunities in this regard?
The challenges is information. The challenges are, you don't know what young kids are doing in Niger, in Mali, and in Burkina Faso, in Zambia, and that's one thing. So we would love to have the opportunity to invest in young tech startups around the continent, because I believe everybody has a chance to make it. The second thing is, the African market is so divided in regards to information, just basic on language and depending on what country colonized them. You have the Francophone side, you have the Anglophone side, and then you have, Angola and Mozambique and South Africa, which is, an island on its own, and then you have North Africa, which is, more or less divided away from Sub-Saharan Africa. So it's we say the continent, but it's really, 4 or 5 different divisions within the continent that we're trying to play in.
Okay, so that's the huge or the greatest bottlenecks that you're facing.
It's a challenge, but it's an opportunity.
Okay, so what are some of the mechanisms or solutions that you came up with?
Social media, honestly. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for social media. You wouldn't know what I'm doing if it wasn't for social media. The publication would not know what we're doing if it wasn't for social media. So I believe social media has made us equal in terms of being able to amplify and inform the rest of the world what we're doing. We're very active on social media. We're very active on promoting Ethiopia. We're very active on selling the opportunities in Africa and the region, and that's one of the reasons that we got recognized for. Is we're very positive, very, very positive on the continent, and obviously on Ethiopia.
Let's also talk about African youngster innovators. So, how are they coping with the rest of the world? Are they coping up with the rest of the world?
They've got up. I think the biggest challenge for our African entrepreneurs, especially youth entrepreneurs, is their governments and their leaderships. The leadership and the government haven't caught up with the kids. I think the youngsters have left and have moved forward much faster and much quicker than the governments and the leadership has. And that's the biggest challenge. So the policies, the regulations, the infrastructure has, a slack back compared to what the kids have done and what the kids are able to do and what the youngsters are doing.
So you're saying is some discrepancy between them?
Huge, because you have 60-year-old guys that are managing leadership and you have 20-year-old kids with amazing technology and know-how. So that gap is what's holding us back.
What kind of solution do you suggest maybe?
I think a sit down and recognition and appreciation of the youth and on the continent is something that needs to happen. You see that a lot. I see that in Kenya, I see that in Ghana, I see that in Nigeria and other markets where the ecosystem and the tech revolution is really taking hold. And then there's countries where things are still lagging behind. I think we, for the first time, have woken up in about 3 years ago with this new administration. For the first time, we have a prime minister that recognizes technology and understands it and wants to use it to move the country forward. So, yeah, we're just beginning the revolution.
As a Khazanah Group, you also envision promoting economic prosperity by supporting companies in Africa through impactful changes and solve critical problems in the lives of communities around the continent. Now tell me, in a continent which has been bombarded with erroneous information and tarnishing of the image of the continent, how successful can this happen and what do you see as a challenge?
I think the challenge is obviously somebody stepping up and saying we could do it on our own. If you see the last 90 days since January this year, African tech startups have raised more money than they've ever raised, in the billions of dollars from Western investors. So the question has been answered. Is Africa an opportunity? Yes, it is. Have people actually believed in it and invested in it? Yes, they have. I think the one entity that's missing, or the two entities that are missing in this equation, are African entrepreneurs themselves and the African diaspora as a second option. So what we're trying to do is wake up the African entrepreneurs to invest in local African tech startups. How many Ethiopian business people have invested in local tech startups? How many Africans have invested in their own local tech startups? We tend to see a lot of Western VC funds, Western investors investing in local tech startups and not enough Africans. The second thing is we don't see enough African diasporas that are professional, that are in the West, that are working, not investing in local tech startups, and that needs to happen, and that's what we want to work on next.
Yeah, okay. You know what, talking about Ethiopia, let's also talk about Ethiopian innovation progress. So Ethiopian young population, how innovative are they in your evaluation?
They're amazing. I mean, for us, every investment we've made, we're not an NGO. When we put our money in, we want the return on that investment. I'm not here to help anybody. I'm an investor, I'm a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur. So if I put 5,000 birr in a company, I want 15,000 birr back. So I'm not going to invest unless I believe your idea is worth it. I believe that the team is the right team, and I believe that you can execute. So we've seen it happen, and we've invested, and we've exited investments. We keep on investing. We're getting more potential investments coming in through the door on a weekly basis. So I'm very positive about the innovation system and the tech system. We have some amazing young people in Ethiopia. The only thing that they're missing is the right policy and funding.
So what is your message then to concerned bodies, in helping or in supporting Ethiopian youngsters so that they will contribute share, not only to Ethiopian, technology sector, but also that of the continent of Africa?
I think for one, my message is to the African private sector, that they need to start looking at technology as a new way of innovation, as a new way of investment and opportunity, as a new way of making money for themselves. So, if you look at the top 10 richest people in the world, they're mostly tech people. they're not traditional business anymore. They're the Googles and the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world, right? So that's where the world is heading, and African entrepreneurs and African business people, traditional African business people, need to start paying attention. The second aspect is for African governments, including our own, to start looking at this sector as the sector that creates an equal sort of playing ground for all of us.
One of your priority areas that you're working on is also communications, right? So how are you trying to refute, this erroneous misinformation and disinformation coming from Western media outlets, some Western media outlets, of course?
It's not just me, but there's a whole bunch of us that are just focusing on the positive. There's enough negative being said about Ethiopia and about the continent. I personally tend to focus just on the positive news. I acknowledge what's going on, and you can't ignore it, but I believe there's enough attention on the negative stuff. There's not enough of us focusing on the positive stuff. So if you follow me on my social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, whatever it is, I only focus on the positive. And that's what I'll continue to do.
Yeah. So what should Ethiopian media outlets do in this regard? I know that you are one of the founders of Afro FM. So since you are in the media industry as well, and also in the politics, everything in connection with the media, some Western media outlets still are, I think, bent on, tarnishing the image of not only Ethiopia, but also the continent of Africa. So being this as it is, I think Ethiopian media outlets and also others, of course, need to, refute in some way. So what should be done in this regard?
The sad thing is, every time you hear a major investment happening in an African tech company, the news usually comes from an outside source. Exactly. Something exactly what you're sitting down here and talking to me about. This source did not come from an African media entity. It came from a foreign media entity. As sad as it is, you're here because you read from a foreign media entity that they had picked me as one of the top 100 people. I would have loved that news to come from a local African entity. When's the last time an Ethiopian entity came out and did a coverage report on tech innovation in Ethiopia or the region? So I think it's a question for all the media houses to ask themselves to see if they're actually doing justice to the tech industry in Africa.
Yeah. So what are some of your evaluations of Ethiopian media outlets reporting?
I think there needs to be a lot of work done. I think it starts from the training that they provide in the schools, in the journalism schools. I believe they need to be a little more outward in terms of their thinking. And journalism has changed. For me, I'm more powerful than some of the media houses in Ethiopia because I have over 100,000 followers on social media. Whatever I post, whatever I say, there's 100,000 people that will reach it, and then multiply that by thousands more, right? So journalism is not what you used to be. I don't have to be a newspaper. I don't have to be a radio station. I don't have to be a TV station to be as powerful in terms of my messaging, right? So I think that needs to sort of, media houses in Ethiopia need to swallow that and understand that. So does the government. I think it's the Egyptian government for the first time that said anybody that has more than 5,000 social media followers need to register as a media company. And it's true, because you're actually an influencer. You're influencing, you're sending out news. Whatever I tweet, there's 50,000 people that will look at it the next day.
Yeah, exactly. Let's also talk about Ethiopia's current issues. As you know, Ethiopia is grappling with various issues from within and overseas, such as sanctions, the HR 6600 and other bills posed against the country. So as an Ethiopian, what are some of your observations and what should be done?
For me personally, I focus on what I can control, right? My focus is on business, on startups, on tech, and regardless of what happens outside that, that still happens. You're still going to, we have 29 million students in the education system, right? 2 million of them graduate every year. For me, that's my biggest worry. If these kids don't have a job, if these kids don't have hope, we don't have a country. That's my focus.
So focus on the positive.
Focus on getting these kids to work. Focus on getting these kids to think positive. Focus on them thinking about making a difference and an impact in their own environment, in their own community, in their own country.
Exactly. I think that's the message. If you have any message that you want to convey, the floor is all yours.
For me, I want to be able to tell the youth that it's up to them to make a difference in their own lives. It's not up to the government. It's not up to their parents. It's not up to the community. It starts with you, right? So I don't care what degree you have. If you don't have a job, go wash your car and make money. But take that first step. I think we have a lot. There needs to be a moral and sort of perception change from the youth that come out of the colleges and universities and high schools and whatnot. Their expectations that somebody else needs to offer them an opportunity. They need to start thinking that they need to offer themselves an opportunity, right? So take the bull by the horn. If you can't do it on your own, get together with your friends. If you can't get together with your friends, get together with your community. If you don't have the money, ask your neighbor, ask your friends, whatever it is, but there's always a way, but make that first step. Nobody else is going to do for you.
Exactly. What a message. Addis, thank you for your wonderful ideas and for your time, and I wish you success in the future.
Thank you, Veto. Thank you, Shireen. Thank you, Veto.
Well, dear viewers, with that, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you for being with us. Bye-bye.